So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forward. And today I'm delighted to have with us Claire Agutter, who's the director at ITSM Zone. So firstly, Claire, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and your company to the audience and tell us how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, and thanks so much for the invitation and the opportunity to chat. I'm going to have to start with a little bit of context because I work in a niche area of IT that many people haven't come across. So I'll explain a little bit about the world that I work in, and then hopefully the businesses that I talk about will make more sense. But I work in an area of tech which is called IT Service Management. So I'm not a technical person. I'm not doing coding or developing. I'm looking at the business of IT and how organizations make sure that they have the IT services in place that will let their users be productive. So we talk about things like having a help desk, having incident management, having a change management process, giving people access to the software that they need to be successful and to be able to carry out their roles. So we look at processes, we look at the future of the organization and how we make sure that we're delivering the IT that is going to support those strategic goals. So that's the area that I work in, and it's really where I've spent my entire career. So I started working on help desks and then moved into change analyst roles, implementation, consultancy. And then 14 years ago, I started my first business, which was ITSM Zone. And ITSM Zone is an e-learning organisation. So we teach people the business of IT service management. We have a big range of accredited courses. Initially, it was restricted to quite traditional service management topics, but more recently we've moved into things like agile development, DevOps, which again, it's quite IT buzzwordy if you're not in that space, but it's new ways of working in IT. So that business has been running for more than a decade now. And then 6 years ago, I started my second business, which was Scopism. And Scopism's more content focused. So we run conferences, we publish white papers, we have a virtual consulting practice as well that runs through Scopism. But again, it's focused on how do we run IT successfully and how do we help professionals, how do we equip them with the knowledge that they need in order to run their businesses better.
Wowzers, that's fascinating. I had my own IT business going back quite a long time before I sold it, and I remember implementing a help desk, a whole bunch of stuff, and there wasn't any help around at that point, or certainly no one was available to. So we very much were making it up as we went along. I remember doing that. So wowzers, that would be really fun. And I guess as technology is just mushrooming so quickly, your demand for your services must be increasing every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're all tired of talking about the pandemic, but the last couple of years, we've seen organizations that have been talking about digital transformation. They've been talking about it for the last 5 years, maybe put a little bit of budget into some research, but then the last 2 years, it's just exploded. A friend of mine who works at GCHQ, he'd always been told, absolutely, you can't work from home, it's not secure. Suddenly they had to find a way to enable people to work from home. So it really is, I think, the last couple of years, we've seen the impact of technology in our working lives, but in our personal lives as well. And the fact that we've been able to keep in touch with friends and family, we've been able to see people's faces. This is how we live now. And when it works, it's wonderful. When it doesn't work, it stinks. So, we need to do our best to make sure it works.
Yes, I guess the good thing about this situation is that people are I think people are a little bit more forgiving of the technology because we have to use it. It's not, we should have a meeting. It's like, well, we can't have a meeting, so we have to make do with what we've got. And I think that's great. And I know from a lot of the things we've done with interviews and meetings we've had, And I've had people so slightly embarrassed that, you know, a dog would jump up or a child would come in the room. And I just think it's lovely. It's just so nice that you get to see a little bit about the person you're meeting, not just the business face.
Yeah, I love that element of it. It's a real human side to the workplace, but I think it's kind of opened my eyes as well to some of the opportunities that we're missing and the level of inclusion that we can offer now, because we've run a conference. So I think we've been running the conference for 5 years now, and it's another niche area of IT, which is service integration and management, or SIAM. But basically SIAM is a way of saying, you know, as a business, we've got 50, 60 suppliers. None of them will work together. None of them will help when something goes wrong. They're all just looking at their own contract. Service integration and management helps kind of build a culture of collaboration. So we've been running this conference, and when we started it, we called it Service North, because the intention was we're going to do it in the North because we're tired of going to London all the time for every single conference. So we did it in Leeds, we did it in Manchester for a couple of years, but obviously with the pandemic, we were a bit stuck for face-to-face events. So we said, well, let's do a virtual conference. And we worked with First Event, who are an amazing event management company based in Leeds. They're absolutely fabulous. And we used their virtual platform. And what that opened my eyes to was like, well, wow, you know, when we were in Manchester, we had attendees coming from, you know, Denmark and Finland and Germany and France. But now we've got attendees coming from Australia and South Africa and Japan and America. And they're all meeting each other and they're having these conversations in our virtual networking suite. We could have speakers from all over the world, you know, because obviously don't have the budget to fly people in from India, but suddenly that's accessible as well. And we did it. We had a Japanese speaker who was speaking in Japanese with subtitles, and fascinating to see was that the attendance didn't drop off. The interaction in the chat was just as good. So suddenly language isn't an issue as well. So I think, you know, there's a lot of people who've kind of come through the pandemic and thought, oh, I can't wait to get back to normal, you know, working in the office, going to face-to-face events. But I think there's kind of a rationale to say, well, actually, let's look at the bigger picture as well and look at these new good things that we can bring with us. And you know, we've decided our conference will remain virtual for, you know, for the foreseeable future, because suddenly it becomes a global event.
Wonderful. I could see. I know we run an annual conference and we had to go virtual, and it really was great. It was wonderful that we could do so. And having people patching from many places, that's wonderful. So when you're growing up, is this the sort of thing you always envisaged yourself doing, or was there a different plan?
I if I'm honest, I never had a plan. I'm still not sure I've got a plan. If I ever figure out what I want to do, I think I'll be quite dangerous. But you know, going through school, I never really enjoyed being at school. I went to university and I'd literally picked a course with a pin. So, you know, I went to university to do American studies and philosophy, which why I don't know. So I spent a year at university, realized that I was spending money when I could have been earning money. I wasn't really enjoying it. I wasn't getting anything out of it particularly. So I dropped out of university and I was just doing filler jobs at the time. You know, I was working in shops, I was doing some temping, and I did a few night classes to try and see if I could find some direction. So I did an introduction to Visual Basic Programming, which did teach me that I wasn't cut out to be a programmer. I did a introduction to being a mechanic, which was awesome, but again, don't think that's where my route is. And probably the most useful thing I did was my RSA1 in touch typing, which is a skill that has just, you know, carried me through my whole career. So I was kind of drifting, and I think I'm lucky that I fell into IT, because I have a very active brain. I love to be learning. I don't like to be static. So coming into the IT industry, something that's continually changing, is a nice fit for me. And then, you know, from there to setting up a business, and again, you don't have a single day running your own business when you're not learning something, you know, that you didn't know previously. So now I'm doing in my job, but I'm also doing sales and marketing and finance and HR and all the rest of it that kind of wraps around it. So there never was a plan, but I feel incredibly fortunate that I came into the industry that I did, incredibly fortunate that I met my first business partner and we decided to set up a business together, and things have carried on from there. And I think really, if I look back, the only pattern that exists is the fact that if an opportunity is in front of me, I'll stick my hand up and say, yes, pick me. I'll do it. And what's the worst thing that can happen? And that's kind of always been my attitude. And, you know, I love what I do. I find it incredibly fulfilling. So I just, you know, keep moving forward.
Great to hear. I think there's the quote from Richard Branson about, you know, if somebody gives you an opportunity, always say yes and then work out how to do it, which I just think is great.
Yes.
It's don't think about why I can't do it. Let's think about just how I can do it. And I think that's the attitude of many successful people that I speak to, and wonderful. So looking back over the business growth, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome?
I thought about this question, and it's a strange one, because when I look back, there have been some terrible things that have happened. You know, I had probably the worst thing that happened was somebody that I had an awful lot of trust in actually stole from one of the businesses, and we had to go through the process of managing that, and, you know, do that in a way that got us to a resolution but still protected the future of the business as well. So that there's been, you know, there's been challenges like that. There's been personal challenges. There's been, you know, the inevitable VAT inspections, all sorts of things that have happened. But I guess none of them have made me think, I wish I wasn't doing this. So everything that's happened, you find a way to deal with it. You learn, hopefully you add something new to your skill set, and then you move on from there, and hopefully at some point in a couple of years you can look back on it and think, well, you know, that was a pretty rubbish time, but now we're back and we're going in the right direction again. So there's I think there's always going to be issues, and I do say to people, you know, don't start your own business if you don't enjoy difficult conversations, because there will always be difficult conversations, and if you'd rather not have them, then you'll run out of road fairly quickly. So I think sometimes there's an element of just pulling your socks up and doing the things that you don't really want to do, but they've got to be done.
Yeah, it reminds me of the CEO of Actually Coach told me a long time ago. He said that the job of a business owner is to solve problems. So if you don't like problems, you know, get out of business, because that's because that's the big part of it. But the thing I've sort of developed from there, Claire, was that I think problems occur as we grow. So problems are often a function or a indication of growth. If we're steady state, then we probably are problem free, but we're not going anywhere. So it's almost, for me, embracing problems. Go, great, we're going to the next stage. Not always easy to do that, but I think I think it's a more successful, a helpful mindset, I think, to actually see there was a good thing rather than as the challenge there. And what would you say, whether it's from the problems or, I know you said you're a lifelong learner, what are some of the biggest learnings you have in and about business?
So, I mean, there's a couple of things, and the first one is from one of the training courses that we offer, and it's almost zen in it, because the first time I read it I thought, that's just nonsense, and then I thought, and that's a little expression, which is that improving daily work is more important than doing daily work, which comes from the DevOps training course that we do. And you think, because the work's got to be done. But then you start to think about it and you think, well, actually, yes, continually analyze everything that you do in your business. Could it be automated? Could it be streamlined? Could it be delegated? Could it
Yeah.
be outsourced? And that is how you carve out additional time for yourself. And it's quite similar. I think people often talk about, working on your business rather than in your business. And I think it's kind of similar to that. But
Yes.
that's a massive lesson for me. And I'll be honest, we forget it quite regularly. I
Yep.
mention it in the team meeting. I get people to come with ideas, and then business as usual takes over and we forget. But we do try to kind of continually come back to that and improve what we do. So that's kind of one thing which I think is helpful. And then the second thing, which it's taken me a long time to realize this, and I've done an MBA, I've done a Goldman Sachs Growth Accelerator course, I've read every book I can find about business, and suddenly realized that history is written by the winners, because
Yeah.
I firmly believe you can do everything right, everything the business books say, and fail. And you can have a year where you're doing everything wrong, your marketing's rubbish, your sales process is terrible, and you're still making more money than you can understand. So I think there's an element of chance or luck or unpredictability in business, and it's tempting to think that there's something that you can control. If I just had the right sales process, we'd be millionaires by now. But you have to kind of embrace the unpredictability as well.
Yeah, I think you bang on. It's I mean, I remember, in my first business, we got sort of to the 12 million turnover, 100 people, and there was so much luck. It really was. It's a great story about, on the face of it, as you said, very successful. We were growing very, very rapidly. But internally, we had lots of challenges because none of us, we were all technical people. We didn't know how to run businesses. And so we had problems related to that. But also, there was luck at right place, right time. A couple of absolute genius technical guys that came up with the idea that was like no one else had seen. And you look back and there's a lot of luck. And I think it's interesting what I do now, because I think so many businesses are like that. There's a lot of luck involved and backfilling, and rightly so, because people, businesses are started by people that are great typically at what they do, not necessarily great at running businesses what they do. So backfilling those structures, those systems, those processes, once you get to a certain level, is important, but it's not necessarily right at the start. And it's that sort of spark, isn't it? That often is the start of a business. There's often not a rhyme or reason to it. It's just, no, I think it's the right thing to do right now. Let's do it. And yes, but it's a great point. It's absolutely right. And I think there's a really good point to learn, is that even if we're doing everything right and things aren't working, we've got to keep the faith, because things will change ultimately.
Yes.
But it's if I do the right things today, it doesn't mean I'll get the right results today. I should do at some point, but not necessarily now. Interesting. That's really fascinating. And you probably we were a coaching organization. And we learned a lot from sports coaches and different coaches around the world. And I'm interested to know who the best coach you've ever worked with in any part of life.
It's almost difficult to name names here, because I've had so many people who have been astonishing throughout my career, and
Brilliant.
who've supported me in different ways and at different times. So there was a chap called John Murphy, who was my contract manager when I was working on an outsourced deal at the Highways Agency. And he taught me more about management than I think I've ever learned from anybody else. I would have, followed him through anything. Because I think for most of us, you can kind of count on one hand the number of actual good managers you've come across in your life. And John was definitely one of those. Julian White, he was another fabulous one. He gave me a job which was a big step up when I was working at an energy trading company. And then, oh gosh, I'm not going to carry on because I think I'll miss people. But there's just been this fabulous network. And one thing that we have in the IT service management world, which I I don't know if it's replicated in other industries or not, but we have these amazing kind of communities of practice. So initially it was things like the British Computer Society. We've got the IT Service Management Forum, which is the user group for IT. There's always meetups happening in Leeds and Manchester and Sheffield around things like DevOps and Agile. So
Yep.
there's this community that you can embed yourself in. And, you know, it depends what point of your career you're at, because when I was just starting out, I would go and sit at the back and listen and learn, and then gradually, as my career's progressed, there's been opportunity for me to, you know, present and write and kind of share back with the community. And I think that's just a huge piece of it. It's this kind of ongoing coaching and mentoring, because it gives you the opportunity to meet people from different industries,
Yep.
different sectors, and kind of the lessons that they're willing to share is astonishing. And again, you know, post pandemic, doesn't have to be in Leeds. I could go to DevOps Amsterdam because it's
Yeah.
online. So
Yeah.
that, you know, that there's a lot to be said, I think, for taking control of your own personal development, whether you are employed, self-employed, retired. Just meet people, talk, learn,
Yep.
and have an open mind.
Wonderful. Absolutely. It's yeah, I think a common factor again of successful people having it is that lifelong commitment to learning, and it's a wonderful thing. And there's always so much. It always makes me laugh. I was told quite a while ago that Tony Benn, the Labour peer, after he'd retired from Parliament, he was invited to speak on a lecture primarily at universities and colleges. And he'd always start his presentation and he'd say, the first thing he'd say is, we all wake up every morning knowing less than we did the day before. And you'd have all the lecturers in fits go, you can't say that, you know, with education. And you know, what it meant was the amount of information available in the world is exponentially increasing every day. So our percentage of it, even however hard we try, is going to reduce. But we have the duty to try to keep our percentage up, I think. And there's just so much new stuff going on, isn't there? It's it really is amazing. And have you picked up, is there any sort of favourite quotes or sayings that you use on a regular basis that will fall back on in difficult or challenging times?
The one that, this is ridiculous, but the only one that I use regularly is stick to your knitting, because I have a tendency to be a bit of a control freak, and I have a tendency to get involved in things that I would be better giving to someone else to do. So every now and then I have to give myself a little kick and remind myself that actually I might be better engaging, you know, whether it's some financial advice or a marketing consultant or a sales consultant or an HR organization. It will save me probably 2 days worth of research, and I'll be paying for about an hour of their time because they know what they're doing. So yeah, every now and then I just need to remind myself where my time is best spent in the organization.
Absolutely. It's a very very valuable lesson. I've not heard that phrase for a long time, but yeah, it's a great phrase. It's a brilliant phrase. I've heard different types of comment like that, but not that one for a long time. And what would you say you've learned about yourself as you've developed your career?
I guess there's kind of two things here. One, I think, is the fact that I am much more ambitious than I thought I was, because I will work incredibly hard, you know, sometimes on side projects that are not hugely financially lucrative, but because I love them, because I'm passionate about them, I will work incredibly hard. So I think going through school, you know, not fitting into the traditional careers path, not knowing where I wanted to be. So I never thought of myself as ambitious. But then I look back and think, well, actually, you know, I've started 2 businesses, I've written about 10 books by now, you know, I've presented all over the world. So maybe I am that. And the other trait that I have, which I think is very useful for business, is just resilience. You know, we operate very much in terms of experiments in the organization. We try to work on new products and services in a very sort of low cost, low risk way, test the market, see if it works or not. And we do dozens of things, and every now and then my husband, because he's part of the business as well now, my husband will say, oh, remember when we did such and such? And I'll just think, no, because it didn't work, and I literally just moved on. You know, I'm not thinking about things. It's just a kind of, that happened, it didn't work, and now we move on. And I think that resilience, it's kind of, it's like when you go into every sales conversation, you have to think this one is going to convert. And I think if you don't have that resilience after, 9 or 10 conversations where you don't get the outcome that you want, you start to feel a bit beaten down and a bit kind of, oh, is there even any point? But I think if you've got that resilience, every time, this could be the one. And sometimes it is.
Absolutely. And the quote from Henry Ford that I love, which is very relevant to that, which is, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And if you don't believe you're going to go into a sales meeting and win the sale, then just don't bother going, in my opinion. It's like there is no point unless you're absolutely convinced that that person needs your help, unless you're going in to find that out, which is obviously a big part of sales. But no, absolutely. But what's the phrase? I love, there's a couple of phrases in sales that I was taught, which is, one was, some say yes, some say no, so what, move on. And I think because that's the reality, isn't it? Although we need to believe everyone's going to come on board, we also need to understand that once they've said no, that's okay. And it's not a personal opinion or comment on anything we've done necessarily, but sometimes it can be. So I mean, looking forward, obviously it's great to see how, what you've achieved already. Looking forward, what does the future look like, and what might be some of the challenges you face, if any?
So we had a big change in the businesses last year because we took some external investment. So we've got a new shareholder now, which is part of a group of companies called Globalution, who are very much focused on the future of work. So we're bringing kind of the service management expertise and the education expertise. There's other companies in the group focused on things like flexible working, outsourcing. So that in itself was another one of these business learning experiences, going through the whole process of the negotiation, all the legal stuff that comes after it, the financial stuff that comes after that, and then the integration into a new group. And that's an education challenge on both sides, because they need to learn more about us, we need to learn more about them, and then it's having this joint strategy to move forward. So really the future looks like more integration into this broader strategy, bigger focus on future of work, and I guess changing operating models beyond the IT space. IT now isn't just confined to the IT department. So what does it mean for things like structure, leadership, culture, skills? How do we look at those elements as well? And then kind of the plan, we haven't set a date, is to exit at some point, and then after that, who knows? I'm desperately trying not to plan too far ahead, because I do have a tendency to jump straight from one project into another one. So I think I'll, maybe once we exit, take some time off, play with the dog, do some walking, and then kind of see what the future holds from there.
You're not sure once you do exit, what to do next. It's really interesting, Claire, and we've done a fair bit of work on this, and unfortunately, and I only say this because it is worth spending time on planning your exit, is that there's a stat that was brought up with, we work with an organization called Value Builder, and they look at not just business valuations, but successful exits. And I think the stat is about 73% of people, of owners, regret the sale within a year of selling.
Wow.
So I only say that as something just to bear in mind, that it's really important that we understand, we have something to go to. And I've helped quite a few people exit businesses, and one of the things I saw is, without a plan, we can actually subconsciously sabotage the exit, because we don't know what we're going to do next. What our subconscious doesn't want us to exit. It's like, well, no. So that whole planning and thinking about next things it really is key, and it's really important, because when you're driven people, and typically people like yourselves are driven to get where you get there in the first place, is although there is can be an element of switch off for a period. I think it's good to say, okay, in some cases I've said to people, look, just chill till the point at which your brain starts going, got to do something.
Yes.
If that's the right thing. But some people they actually want to go to the next thing straight away. But yeah,
it's a funny one, because one of my friends, she's 47, and she's just coming out of her career. Her and her husband are both retiring in 2 months, and in a way she's going to be an interesting learning curve for me, because it will be fascinating to see. But she's had several people say to her, oh, you're going to be so bored. And we both look at each other and think, that there is so much to do. I have so many things that I want to do. The idea of being bored, maybe I will get bored, and it'd be nice to have an opportunity to be bored, because there hasn't been much space for that in the last 15 years. But I think there's so many things that can be done. And again, when you are at that point in your career where you have something to give back, there's non-exec roles, there's trustee roles, there's the opportunity to get involved in coaching and mentoring. If and that's just the things that are kind of related to work, and outside of work there's so much to kind of do as well. So yeah, I can understand that. And I've met, I think there's people in my industry who are still very much employed into their late 60s and early 70s, and part of that is because they love what they do, but I think part of that is because they wouldn't know what else to do if they weren't going to the conferences and speaking and presenting. So I think that there's different there's different paths for different people. And one of the big things for me is to ensure that the businesses can carry on beyond the point where I do exit. So building the resilience into the businesses as well.
Brilliant. Absolutely. And well, interesting enough, our definition of a true business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without its owners.
Yes.
And then it is a business, and then we can choose to continue to own it, but not be in it. We can sell it, and it's worth significantly more when it is proven to be. But we can cherry pick, and I've worked with clients that cherry pick the things they really love in the business. The business continues, and they go back, almost going back to being what they did when they started. I worked with the joinery business many years ago, and we grew that, and the owner ultimately just wanted a nice area in his factory to work his wood, and that was what he does. But he still owns, he's the best paid joiner in the north of England, I think now. But and right so, and it is sort of I think Stephen Covey talks about start with the end in mind, and I think that's I think it is really important. But no, brilliant. But yes, it's not, the stat is just an interesting stat. It doesn't mean that's going to be true of any individual person, but I think it is worth spending time working on it, because there are traps out there for people. I have worked with other people that, having sold one business, started 3 more. When selling the business, the whole point was like, no, we're in the process of actually getting them out of those 3 businesses, which is fun, and we have a lot of fun around that, because it is it was a mistake, but there we go. No names, no pat drills, so that's good. So just as we sort of come to close, just a few simple, we're interested to get your views on what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now, Claire?
I think in a way it's never been easier, particularly in the online world. It's never been easier to throw up a website, test an idea, and just see what happens. When you look at a website, you've got no idea, is this a one-man band, or is this a hundreds of people type organization? You can start playing in some big spaces very quickly. So I think in one way it's never been easier, but you still have to be certain that it's the right thing for you. And I think that involves looking at the network that you've got around you as well.
Yep.
So, you know, would your spouse be supportive? You know, do you have financial commitments that you need to meet? Do you have some money saved up in case things don't go well? Because quite often in year one, you know, you're not
Yep.
making the money that you used to. So think about the support network that you've got. The amazing thing about running a business is when it goes well, it's all you. But
Yeah.
the flip side of that is when it goes badly, it's all you. You know, and because I work with my husband now as well, it's tough. There used to be
Yes.
situations, you know, he was running his own business and I was bringing in a wage, or I was running my own business and he was bringing in a wage. But, you know, we've had tough months where we've been looking at each other and going, how are we going to pay the mortgage, darling? You know, kind of thing. So it's easy, I think, to look at people running a business and think, I could do that. You know, one of the things my husband used to do was run a martial arts gym. And he used to teach classes and people would turn up and pay him £5. And every now and then someone in the class would kind of go, oh, all right for you, just sat there collecting fivers. They're not thinking about, you know, the business rates, the rent, the insurance, the power bills, the ongoing education that you had to do.
Yep.
There's a lot around it, I think. And I, every now and then, because I've got a lot of friends in the IT industry, every now and then, you know, I talk to my friends who work at the big businesses and they're on 95,000 pounds a year plus pension plus bonus. And I'm thinking, not really making that much money myself. But then I think, I don't want a job, you know, I don't want to have to go to meetings and, you know, not be able to just go to the gym when I want, or set my own schedule, be in charge of my own destiny. So think about the type of person you are as well.
Yeah.
And it's quite a long waffly answer, but I think
Great.
there's a lot of people that it's just not for them going into business. But
Yeah.
if you've got that spark and you think it might be for you, just start to test some ideas, you know, build a presence online, do it through your social media, even, you know, do it through LinkedIn. But
Yep.
you know, it's phenomenally rewarding, but it can be absolutely terrifying as well.
Yes. Yeah. That's, I think, the very, very wise words. I often say to people that you know, the challenge, or one of the biggest challenges of running a business, is the buck ultimately stops with us. You know, it is
Yeah.
our responsibility until maybe we get someone in place to do that. So the buck stops us. But the great thing about running a business is we get to choose how it is. And it doesn't, you know, there isn't a stand, you know, there may be a standard or not, but we don't have to follow it. So whether, you know, the hours we work, the days we work, what we do, how we do it, you know, all those things. And I think that's that freedom is something that I think many people are really attracted to, which I love. And if you started your business again, is there anything you would do differently, would you think?
Gosh, I suspect in a way probably not, because everything's just been this continual learning curve. I mean, you know, if I look at the e-learning business, the courses we've got now are really slick. And if I go back and look at the ones we first published 14 years ago, oh, they make my toes curl, you know. Thankfully, they're all withdrawn now because they're all pretty dated. But
Brilliant.
but no, I suppose the one thing I would possibly do is back to the stick to your knitting thing, be more willing to pay for more expertise early
Yeah.
on. You know, it took us quite a few years before we did things like engage with, you know, marketing agencies, business development organizations. We could have done that earlier. And I think we were possibly a little bit frightened in terms of, you know, cash flow, but
Yes.
there's always that balance between how much are we willing to spend in order to grow, or how much
Yes.
do we want to just keep hold of in order to feel safe and secure. So perhaps there's a slight increase in risk would have been appropriate as well.
It's a challenging one, isn't it? It's I often say to people, as a business grows, survival establishment of survival phrase is very much about, you know, every decision could be the last. There's a lot of fear involved. We look at things more as a cost rather than investment, and it's that gradual move towards an investment mindset that supports growth. You know, rather than a survival mindset, which is let's just get through to next week and next month and next year. And it is a process. There is, and I do see people often get stuck in that. And in fact, I've seen, you know, I've worked with a couple of very large businesses that are still in that mindset, and they know it's holding them back, because it's, you know, anything with too many zeros on it becomes a difficult investment to make. And it really is interesting, because you know, I'm working with somebody, I've been working with somebody a long time who literally totally acknowledges it, and you know, the big part of the coaching is consistently addressing that. Oh, that seems like a lot of money, and well, compared to what? It might have been a lot of money when you started your business, absolutely, but right now it's less than 0.01% of your turnover. So, you know, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think mindset, you know, needs to change over time, doesn't it? And just finally, what would be the best advice you could give to an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so?
The advice I would give younger me would be about the importance of network, which it took me a long time to understand. I think particularly for British people, you know, you say networking and they go, oh, cringe, no, I don't want to. And you sometimes you get these horrible events where people are literally assessing you to see if you could be useful, and if not, move on. But there's kind of a softer networking which has been enormously beneficial to me in so many different ways, and some of that is personal, but there's a massive amount of that takes place online now. So, you know, I'm not on Facebook. I've never had a Facebook account. I am on Twitter. I am on LinkedIn, and I use those mainly for professional purposes. And what that's allowed me to do is have some just fascinating conversations and make connections again with people from all over the world that I'm never ever going to meet in a different context. You know, we're never going to bump into each other at a conference. We're not going to meet in a coffee shop. But that network now, you know, if I need someone in Australia, I've got amazing people I can call on. If I need someone in Japan or India or North America, and it's immensely rewarding. And that's not just coming to it from a commercial perspective. You know, it does absolutely generate opportunities, and it allows me to share opportunities as well. But it's a personally fulfilling thing too. And, you know, meeting different people, different perspectives, I think makes me holistically a kind of a better business person, because I'm not just thinking in terms of my town, my county, my country even. I'm always looking at things from that global perspective.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Well, on those very wise words, and I'm sort of thinking about many things. Thank you so much, Claire. That's been really fascinating and really interesting. And I think there's some really big takeaways from what we've discussed today, and really wish you very well for the future in everything you're doing, and look forward to seeing the next stage of growth and potentially that exit that you will richly deserve, I'm sure, when it comes.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation as well.